G'day, we're back again. I'm going to continue on a little bit with what we were talking about yesterday with the meeting we had with Terry Mulder, the State Transport Minister. I was fairly meek and mild yesterday about the outcome of that meeting, even though I did indicate that we weren't overly impressed with it. But there was something else about that meeting which has been playing on my mind since I didn't mention it in yesterday's blog, and it's been playing on my mind overnight, and I thought, no, I am going to mention it because it was outright disgusting as far as I'm concerned. And that is the one of the people in the room, and I'm going to mention who he was, Transport Advisor Edmund Carew. And I'm not saying he's totally wrong in what he was accusing us of, but I think he needs a check-up from the neck up. A bad case of stinking thinking going on here, and it was his way of telling us to pull our heads in a bit, and unfortunately that was probably not the smartest thing for him to be doing at that particular time. All in all, not impressed with the meeting, not impressed with what they offered us. Yes, they are doing some work, there's a lot of work being done out there, and it's costing some money. I don't disagree with that, and I appreciate what they're doing. But there was a couple of times there, and it started off with a comment that Michael made, and I forget exactly what the exact comment was that Michael made, but it was to do with a bit of direct action. And the moment the word direct action, or the indication of some direct action, was insinuated, this galah, and I won't call him names, I shouldn't do that, Edmund, what he did, he said, he looked at Michael and he said, well, that's an act of being, that's a very selfish act. And I looked at him and I thought, that's a fairly dangerous thing to be saying, with us in the room, because we don't consider that what we're doing is selfish at all. And so the question was asked, well, where do you come from, that's a selfish act? And he began to explain, I forget exactly what I put on yesterday's video, so I hope I'm not repeating myself because I don't want to bore you, but he was actually saying that, if we go out and blockade trams, trying to get our point across about accessible public transport, that there could be a senior citizen on that tram that's on his way to an appointment, and if we hold that tram up, he's going to miss his appointment, and it might be with a specialist, and that might knock him out for the next 6 or 12 months before he can get another appointment. And I thought, well, that's fair enough, but like I said to him, I said, well, that's probably not going to happen because your transport system is so inaccessible that senior citizen probably can't get on the blasted tram in the first place. So it's more than likely he won't be on the tram. But at the same time, I can sort of see what Emma was saying, as in, when we do create a blockade, that it does inconvenience people. There's no doubt about that, but we do. We try and do these things in a way, if we feel the need. They're only ever done as a last resort. It usually means we've tried everything else, and the decision for some direct action comes as an absolute last resort. So let's have a look at the word selfish then. What has happened to get us, before I go on, so I guess in that aspect, people on the tram are being inconvenienced, or on the public transport are being inconvenienced if we, create some sort of protest or demonstration. But it's no different to any other protest or demonstration, and as any other protest or demonstration, they're normally done as an act of last resort. But let's have a bit of a look at what this word of a selfish act. Alright? As I said previously, that wheelchairs have been around since before push bikes, so there's always been people using wheelchairs. Those people in days gone by, remember the old red trains here in Melbourne with those really skinny doors? You couldn't get a wheelchair in them. You couldn't get a wheelchair in them. There was no move by any government to make those trains accessible. For many, many years, there was no consideration to making any form of public transport accessible for people in wheelchairs, or for people that had needs above and beyond that of what we would call the normal. I don't know there is a normal, but needs above and beyond that of an ambulant person that can get around quite well. There was never any attempt made. That's an act of selfishness. To keep people with disabilities or needs above and beyond that, I'm going to use the word to sum it up and call them people that use the term people with disabilities. to keep people with disabilities basically locked up and out of sight. That's an act of selfishness. To not do anything at all about making the public arena more wheelchair accessible or friendly, that's an act of selfishness, and that was all done by governments. So if there's been an act of selfishness carried out, it has been by governments, and it's been going on for years, and not just any one government, all governments, and it still goes on today. It still goes on today because governments are selfish enough that they refuse to step outside of their comfy zone and do something that will benefit the whole society. As I mentioned yesterday, at train stations we're now going to see stairs, lifts and ramps. Well, which is the most dispensable of those three? It's the stairs. But they never ever did that until people started protesting and said, we need ramps. There needs to be ramps at these railway stations so that people with pushers, wheelchairs and push bikes can get on, up and down, on and off the trains. But that wasn't done until people started protesting and complaining and making noises. So the government there was showing an act of selfishness. I'm really annoyed at the fact that we got accused of carrying out an act of selfishness, as you can possibly gather. But it's been irritating me, and I'm annoyed that I didn't actually put it on yesterday's vlog. But anyway, we're getting it out now. So, Mr Carew, before you start accusing us of carrying out acts of selfishness, and basically what you're accusing us of is being selfish. That's what you're accusing us of. Even though you very smartly and politically correctly use the term act of selfishness, I can't carry out an act of selfishness unless I'm personally a selfish person, and I guess in a way we all are to an extent. So I'm not actually saying I'm not selfish to an extent, but what I am saying is we all are selfish to an extent, including you, Mr Carew. I noticed you didn't volunteer your phone number the other day when we were sitting there with you, saying that if you get stuck out there after dark and the public transport can't get you home because there's no taxis after dark, we can't get a blasted taxi for hours, we wait hours on end for a taxi, of which no government is prepared to stand up and pull this taxi industry into line and tell them to smarten up or shape up or ship out. No government's got the backbone to pull a stunt like that, so we can't wait for it. We can't expect to get a taxi in any reasonable amount of time, and we can't get a tram because we can't get on the blasted things because there's no super stops or low floor trams working as a plan out there in the suburbs. So you get stuck out there. The only place we can get into the town is from blasted Box Hill or St Kilda, and if you're not in one of those two suburbs, then forget about trams. And okay, we're lucky, providing you've got enough power in your wheelchair and you're somewhere near a train station, then you can possibly catch a tram. But don't be out on the Burwood Highway. Don't be anywhere out near Springbar Road and Burwood Highway, because you can't get on the trams even though they run past you every 5 minutes, and there's no trains within Cooey. And like I said, can't get a taxi. But you didn't offer us your phone number to help us sort the problem out if we happen to be stuck out there in a situation like that after dark, did you? No, well, that's an act of selfishness. You want to talk about acts of selfishness? I didn't see you putting yourself on the line, to really start batting and helping us get this public transport system thought out. In fact, all you came up with was excuses as to, in your books, they might be reasons, but one man's reason is another man's excuse. And all you came up with was excuses as to why you're not putting any more money, or can't so-called put any more money into accessible public transport. So don't, act of selfishness. Let's understand, act of selfishness comes on both sides of the fence. And I don't believe that you're any less selfish, Mr Carew, than what, say, someone like me might be. And I'm not saying I am. You're the one that accused me of carrying out acts of selfishness. But that was a silly, we went in there to talk about exactly what the Liberal government is going to be doing as far as present and future access projects are concerned. And we had a reasonable conversation with the other three people in the room, except you. You just seemed to me to be wanting to cause a problem. And you very nearly did. As I said to you, I said, you want selfishness, I'll give you selfishness in capital letters and I'll give it on the front page. And you came very close to creating a situation that could have embarrassed you quite loudly. But anyway, I won't go into that. Anyway, that's my speech for the day. I'll get off my soapbox now. All in all, as I said, there's a bit of work being done out there. Very impressed with some of the comments some of the other people made in the room, in particular Norman Gray. He seems to be doing some positive things as far as access projects are concerned. But as always, the government needs to spend more. They need to do it now, and we need to get this accessible project on the ground, up and running. And back to this act of selfishness, the fact, Mr Carew, that the governments are behind, way behind the laws. So you're actually breaking laws now. You're breaking laws because you're not keeping up with the standards that were set up a few years ago as to where you should be by now as far as making the public transport system accessible. So you're actually breaking a law and you're showing no guilt about it. Now there's an act of selfishness in capital letters. You want to talk about act of selfishness, then have a good look in the mirror. Have a good look in the mirror at what your government's doing. Because there's a set of standards that you're not abiding by. There's a set of standards that have been set down as law, and you made no mention and no apology that you haven't been able to keep up with them. Now that's an act of selfishness, if you want to get down to tin tacks. You know what the bottom line is? I know full well that if something was to happen to you in your life tonight or tomorrow and you finished up in a wheelchair, you would be out there with us. Because only then, and only then, can you understand why we talk about the need for having fully independently accessible public transport. And you might not even have to finish up in a wheelchair. You might just wake up and find that you can't walk properly and you need some physical aids, a walking stick. And it might be because of age, not because of an accident or an illness. Alright? When none of us are immune to age for a start. And age is going to affect every single person, sooner or later. Accessible transport will certainly help you get out and have a decent day. As I said, I think I've had my say. I think I better pull my head in for today and get off this soapbox before it breaks. Alright, thanks for listening, and let's get this accessible transport happening, peoples, and let's keep the push, keep it moving, and governments listen in, plug it in, and speed it up. Okay, thanks for listening.